Hi, I'm Lars. Welcome back to the workshop. This video is about building the base structure for the torsion box table for my CNC Elite Foreman. It's a Onefinity Elite Foreman. I've elected to make this out of 2x4s. I'm going to make a frame that goes around the bottom of this, and then it's going to have a support in the middle and then a couple splines going across to keep those apart. The table structure itself is going to be 25 inches off the ground. I know that does not sound very high, but once you add in the 3.5 inches for this and the 9 inches for the rail, trying to reach across that rail to get to something out in the middle of this cutting field, if you will, starts becoming a problem when you start getting higher up. So the 25 inches plus the 3.5 will make it 28.5. And then you got 9 inches on top of that. So that becomes 37.5 inches, which is almost as tall as the table is that I'm standing in front of right now. So that we've elected to take that into consideration and drop everything down further. The legs will be about 21.5 inches tall, but those are only going to be, that means that this thing here is going to be sitting on top, basically sitting on top of the legs. So the legs will come up in between here. So without further ado, I'm going to start getting some of these 2x4s cut. So what I did on this to get this level is all of these legs that are sitting here, they are just clamped on. They're not screwed in and nothing. That gives me the ability to move the legs up and down and adjust the clamps. So this is pretty much as level as I'm possibly going to get it. And what I'm going to have to do is get these things screwed in. I still need, as you can see, there's a couple legs laying on the floor. I still need to get those in place. There's five more to go. And then once those, but I need to get the exterior done first so I can get the screws in them. Once screws are in them, then I can take the other legs and just kind of push them to the ground, or lay them up against the 2x4, push them to the ground, put screws in them. So other than that, moving along. Got a little bit more done than I wanted to, but I had somebody come by and help and they did not want to be on camera. So that's just how it goes. This is set up. I'm going to zoom in on a bunch of stuff to talk about how the table was actually built. But for the most part, this is sitting on here pretty daggone flat. I'm pretty happy with it. There's a little, maybe a 1/16 of an inch of a little swale in the middle, and the wasteboard will take care of that when we run the bit on the wasteboard. So let me give you a little tour of what's going on. I'm gonna just kind of go across the front of the deck here. So there are two decks. There's the table and then there's the stand for the table. And as you can see on the corners right up here, there's stabilization. All right, so there's one on each side. There's one around the side here, and there's one here. In the middle here, they're tied to the webbing going back, so I don't really need them there. And as you can see, there's more. I put more boards underneath just to make sure that we're going to be more stable. And that's the same on the other side. Now each corner right here, right there, has a piece of plywood that is screwed to the deck and also screwed to the table support. And I'm going to go around the side of there to show you that. This is the back right corner. These are here, and they're protruding up off the top a little bit. And no, I don't need those to hold this in place. I don't need this. But there will be a canopy over top of this. And this is to keep the canopy from falling off. All right, so just in the corners, there'll be doors along each side, probably not in the back, but on each side and in the front, there'll be doors that'll be able to open, and I'll have to figure out something different for that. Now, one thing I did not go through in the initial setup was putting on the spindle, okay? We did go over down here on the side, the servos. There's 3 servos on here. This servo at the top, we did not have to put that one on. So, in order to put the spindle component on, there's 4 screws right here. These are the 4, all right? So there's a couple down here at the bottom, right here, and respectively on the other side, over here on this side. And then there's this one and this one. These are a little bit of a pain in the butt to get your fingers in there with a 3mm Allen wrench, but it is doable. Now, once you get to the top of this, there is another limiter control here, okay? This goes into the X limiter and tells the machine to stop. You're going to find, if you have a spindle, you're going to find the spindle cable that you should be running by now. Well, you need to run your spindle cable and drag chain. So in order to pop these drag chains apart, you just take a screwdriver, a little flathead screwdriver, and you pry back the little tab, all right? I'll see if I can get that on the other side tightened in once I start putting them together so you can see it. So this, you got to be real careful with this, but you're going to tuck your wires underneath this side. Here, let me pull this up like this. You're going to tuck the wires under this side and your router or spindle controller stuff underneath this side. Now, I do not have a router, so I can't really speak exactly about how that would work. But for the spindle, it's not that bad. Once you get your spindle in and figure out where you're going to put it, I would put a little bit of cable sticking up at the top here like that in case you adjust this. Because I'm going to tell you what, taking this drag chain apart all the way down and moving that cable back and forth, it's a pain in the butt. That's just not even an exaggeration. So I would leave a little bit up on this, and that's exactly what I'm going to do when we put this in. So for starters, let me get my spindle put in. Putting the spindle in is really not that bad. This is some people call it a PWN CNC or PWN CNC. I really have no idea what their name is. But I'm just going to face this forward. I'm just going to come down to the port where the C on PWN CNC is, and then I'm just going to tighten up these Allen nuts, these Allen screws. A little bit of finger tighten, not real hard. And then you should be able to let this go. At that point, I would take another, I don't know, half turn if you could get it. But don't crank it down. You don't need to strip out these Allen bolts. And there's enough surface material here. This is not going to go anywhere. Now, at this point in time, you can see how easy the spindle is going to just drop all the way down. So do I really need it to be down that low? I don't think so, because that's going to go right through my board. All right. So maybe we want to raise this up some, or raise this up some. Either way. But no matter how this is, there's little tabs on the outside of this that if you find them where they're at, maybe there's not little tabs for this. There is little tabs, but that's kind of crazy. Yeah, there are tabs inside. Okay, so there's 2 tabs and then there's 1 tab. So you got to find the 2 tabs together, and that goes up front here to the right a little bit. Maybe. There it goes. Wish that came up a little higher. That'd be nice. Okay, that seems to get tight. So this is really low. I don't think I would ever want that to bury itself into my table. So I may be moving this up, maybe leaving this where it's at, but moving these screws up here at the top, maybe going down, because right now I'm in the second grouping. Maybe I'll go down to the fourth grouping, or third grouping, at least to get this off the table. Because this, like I said, this is buried down. Not a good thing. So let me move this up. In order to do that, you need to take the spindle off, or at least out. The reason is this spindle weighs quite a bit, and it's a lot to hold all this up with one hand and trying to you know, get these screws out and get all this stuff in. And this is not light either. At least for my spindle it's not. Now I don't know about a router one, it might be a little lighter. I don't know. So since that slid, this should pull out. Feel like I'm dealing with plutonium or something. All right, so being that the slider is down, I can loosen these screws up pretty easy. And then need to move the slider up. And you'll notice when this is going, lights will flash on this because the magnets or whatever's in it are triggering. And man, they tuck these things just barely behind these shafts. Which I don't know why, but it's where they're at. And here comes Sheeby, the curious shop cat. Okay, since I needed to move this up, I'm going to go up to the very, very top of this. Like I said, I don't think I will ever be that close to the bottom, but I don't know for sure. Okay, so there is 1 inch in between the two of these. So if I go down 1, I'm going to be basically 1/4 inch off my wasteboard, which I don't think I'll ever be there. And then if I go down 2 inches, I'll be no more than 1 inch off the top of the wasteboard. I can always adjust the spindle height if I need it. So let's do that. We're going to go all the way to the bottom here. Okay, one point I need to tell you at this time, make a note of this. You never want to tighten these things down before you get them all in. You want to keep them loose, otherwise you're not going to be able to adjust this, all right? So I'm just making these a little snug right now because I gotta bring this back down to here and get a level. So you want to take a square. You might not have a square this big, might be too big of a square, and put this up against here and make sure that this thing is square. All right, so right now I can see it's not. And now it is. So now that I push it over and get it square, now I can tighten down one of these nuts, one of these screws, pretty good, and then snug another one. So that's pretty good. And move this up. Still square. And let's put this back in. There we go. Now from right, Yep, 2 inches off my board here. So that puts it 1.25 inches off my waste board, which is good because I don't want to ever drag the spindle across my board. Now, back up to the top. Again, trying to hook this back up with the two pins up front. There we go. It goes down in there. Spin that down. It's like that. There'll be water cooled lines out of here. Again, you want to keep this with enough cable up here, which is really good because it's in the actual highest position that it could be in. And I'm probably never going to change this now, but I'm going to put this back in its clip back here like that. This guy has got to get plugged in, which this is the Z3. It says Z3, and this is your limiter switch. Looks like a limiter switch. I don't think it is though. Maybe it's the limiter of the Z travel. Yeah, there's a limiter switch right here. This goes up and hits that, so that's another limiter switch. So we're going to take that, tuck it in on one side in the holes. I'm going to put it in the other. As much of that cable as I can. Make sure all this is underneath here and we're not pinching any of it off. Let me get my glasses on. Because you don't want to pinch any of these wires. Because not saying this metal's really sharp, but it does have a pretty crisp edge on it. And if it gets on top of one of these wires, you crank this thing down, which I'm not saying to do, just barely get that snug, it will cut that wire. Now this doesn't seem like there's a lot of pressure on this on either way, so this is not moving, so I think we're okay. Alright, now to talk about the drag chain. These are links in the drag chain. These are Rowdy Roman, I think his name is. I found him over on Etsy. There's a link in the setup, the unboxing and setup #1 video that I have. I'll also put the link in here. These are pretty cool. These are for your hoses. Otherwise your hoses are going to be hooked up on some sort of cabling system, I'm sure you guys have seen on the internet. These are $39 for the set for the X bar and a set, set for the Y bar. Otherwise they're like $28 a piece, for one set, or 22 bucks or something like that. The way that this drag chain works, I'm going to click these guys down. So they're really easy to click down. Took a minute to look at them, and I'm going to zoom in on this. Pretty tight. So I'm going to click this guy down. Alright, maybe we'll click this one down. Alright, so I'm going to click that down. I really can't tell how focused this is. Hang on. I'm trying to get it focused so you can see it. I think that's good right there. Alright, so there's a little tab here. Okay, lift back on it and up, it'll pop up. Alright? So I've had success with that. I've also had success with just putting a screwdriver in there and just kind of tilting it and pulling it back at the same time. But once you get them off, they pop back pretty easily. And then that's pretty much it. They are a little bit a pain in the butt to get this big cable in, and I'm going to show you on the other on the Y bar what I'm talking about. Okay, as you can see, this is still the X bar. I'm just clicking these guys down. They go down pretty easily. These braided covered wire nets, they actually will move out of the way pretty well. Now when you get to the Y bar, adding some stuff in, I don't know if you can see this or not. There's two wires that are in here. All right, I think you can see this a little better. There's the X2 cable and there's the Z2 cable. Plus you're going to have your spindle cable in there too. All right. So they will all fit in here. These are not solid wires. These are wire casings. And inside of them there's a bunch of like 20, I'd say 22 gauge wire maybe. So it's just computer wire. It's very low voltage. But these are just to protect them and to keep them together. Now, from this point here, your X2, you plug into your X2. That goes down to your stepper motor on the other side. This one goes to the limiter up on the top, okay? There's a limiter up on top here. So that's where it's going to go. It's up here on the very top, up here at the top. The Z2 cable gets plugged in the back here. So there's a Z2 cable right here and the limiter's up on top. If I go up any higher, you're going to get a LED in your guys' eyes, and I don't want that. So these are very important to keep your cables away from each other and away from everything else. So that's pretty much it. All right, we're to the point of getting this thing squared and getting it bolted down. One small thing, I don't like the height of these. My own little pet peeve. But this gantry back here is literally floating about 1/8 of an inch off this piece of plywood. I personally would recommend to anybody that is doing this, get this thing get the measurements and everything that you perfectly want, and then cut this out. I'm not going to do that because I've already got everything glued down and whatnot. Or don't even put it in. Leave a bay there. Like measure from the front of this, the inside of this foot and that foot, and leave yourself a little bit of a bay, right? I wish I would have done that. So I'm going to be putting down 3/4 inch plywood because these things, as far as I can tell, I can't find them on Onefinity's website. But personally, I think these things should be at least 1/2 inch thick. I mean, they're just aluminum, I believe. And I just think they should be about 1/2 inch thick. Secondly, so what I'm going to do is cut out a piece of plywood. I'm going to mark these guys. I'm going to drill holes completely through this and put a nut on the back side and have an Allen on the front, up here at the top, an Allen wrench, instead of these screws. These are wood screws. I'm sure they would work, great, but they are actually way too short for what I need, because right now they're barely going to get past this 3/4 inch piece of wood going through this mount. And I still have another piece up here, and therefore I will not be able to get into my 1/2 inch piece of plywood at the bottom. So, which if I'm going to do this right, I'll probably take this 1/2 inch piece of plywood, probably cut another piece of this and mount it on the bottom, drill holes completely through everything, and then I'll just run that bolt all the way down. And I have to do that 4 times. Well, 16 times. So at this point, we need to get these guys in and we need to get this thing squared up. So I've got all my bolts from my nuts, my washers, and my bolts from Bolt Depot. All right. If I'm not sponsored by these guys in any way, shape, or form, I'm just letting everybody know that if you need to get some bolts at a good price, look at Bolt Depot. I got 1,000 of these T-nuts for 50 bucks. All right. If I was to buy 100 of the T-nuts from my local big box store, it'd cost me 50 bucks. So real good prices on all of their nuts, 100 count, 1 count, doesn't matter what you buy. Just remember you're going to pay for shipping. All right. I decided, instead of just talking about this at the machine, that I would actually put together some diagrams from a bird's eye view, if you will, to better explain what I'm doing. The y-axis is the brown bar, the b-axis is the green bar, and the black axis is the x-bar. When squaring the machine, I assumed that all the rails were not even close to where they needed to be. There were 3 requirements that I needed to make the machine squared. I want the machine to look square to my table. I want the front, I need the front of the y-axis and b-axis rails to be in the same y-plane, and I'll get into that in a minute. I need the y-axis and b-axis rails to be parallel. So so with the same distance here, my first requirement was when I went to the machine to look to square the table. I picked the left side of the table, measured in 13 3/4 inches for the front foot and the rear foot, and said that'll do. Now for step 1. Step 1, since I need something squared, I grab my framing square. It's the largest square that I have. I also checked the square for square. I will put a link in the description for how to do this. Also, I needed 2 long straight items. I knew all of my levels would work. I placed one level along my y-axis rail and the other along the bottom of the y-axis foot. I placed the square in the corner where they met. So the yellow bar here is one of my long square levels, and the red is the other long levels. The gray is my square. Once both levels were touching all of their respected side of the square, I carefully moved the squares and level out of the way. I marked lines around the bottom, on the diagram it's the bottom, but the front and rear feet of the y-axis. I also took a pencil and marked in the holes in the feet where I would need to drill. So you might not need to drill, you might just need to put bolts in, but I drilled through the table and I made the holes in the table larger than the holes so I could move it around a little bit. I put everything back, double checked it, it was good. If not, I would have had to start the step all over. I moved the rails out of the way and step drilled the 4 holes. Mine went from 1/16 up to 1/2 inch. This gives me some wiggle room for the adjustments. You'll need to figure out what you need to do for your table. I inserted a bolt in the front foot right hole, the front foot front right hole, and in the rear foot front right hole, and tightened them down. At this point, I knew that I have one rail that is where I want it to be. I moved my spindle to the front left corner and lowered the spindle down to mark where the bit was at. This would be my origin point. At this point in time, this is where my first issue comes into play, and that's getting the y-axis and the b-axis rails where they're in the same y-plane. So step 2. My second requirement, I need the front of the y-axis and b-axis rails to be in the same y-plane. Since the y-axis is anchored down, there is no possibility with it moving. I placed the b-axis against the bottom of the straight edge, placing it in the same y-plane as the y-axis. This will make the bottoms parallel, but not the top. I placed the x-axis on top of the y and b axes and installed the 4 screws on each side. I took care in lining up all 4 sides so they are flush with the respected other axes and tightened them all down. I pulled the x-axis forward until it was touching the front of the y-axis and b-axis. I rechecked that the 2 straight edges and square had not moved. I put a screw in the front right foot, front left hole. I snugged the screw down but did not fully tighten it. Issue 2, the third requirement. I need the y-axis and b-axis rails to be parallel. The second issue with squaring is getting these 2 axes to be parallel. This is not automatic just because the front of the y-axis and the front of the b-axis are in the same y-plane. Why? The x-axis looks like it could be crooked to what seems to be a 1/4 inch in either direction. So this means the b-axis could not be perpendicular. Onefinity recommends to push the bar to the back. Why would this work? Well, since the y-axis is totally secured and the front of the b-axis is secured and the x-axis is aligned with and secured to both the y-axis and b-axis gantries, pushing the x-axis all the way to the back will pull the b-axis to exactly or really close to where it needs to be. At this point, I need to validate my work. So using the carpenter square measurement, I can do that. The image shows the numbers that I found on when I squared up my Elite Foreman machine. How accurate are the measurements that I took? Well, the only way to really find out is use the Pythagorean theorem. So I took the two numbers, the 52 and the 58 and 5/16, and ran them through the Pythagorean theorem. If those of you who do not know what that is, it's a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared, or the two legs of a right triangle, each one squared, added together, and you take the square root of that, and that should give you the long line or hypotenuse of the triangle. Now, the hypotenuse, if you use the Pythagorean theorem on this, comes out to a decimal of 78.1303. My hypotenuse was 78 and 5/32, or the decimal version is 78.1406, so a difference of 0.0103. I'm going to take this as square. Now, why is mine off? It could be because I was using a tape measure. There could be a number of different reasons, but the main thing is that my two hypotenuses match in measurement length. They're both 78 and 5/32. As you can see behind me, I've got this in place. I'm right where the little pictures ended up. You know, the X bar is still sitting at the back. The B side and the Y side are now parallel. Again, like I said in the pictures portion of this, for a little bit better information, I think. Hopefully, it was better information. I'm only off 0.0103 inches. Now that's my calculation. That's not that this angle here and this angle here are off that. They're right across the carpenter's measurement. Those actually match, and it's still 52 and 52 and everything else is there. So I think, I don't have one sitting here, but I think it's due to me using just a tape measure and not like, using a proper measuring tool or anything like that. So the method that I put out, it works. It's pretty solid. If for some reason you get to a point and you're like, well, this is still not right, 99% of the time it's going to be the B rail is either setting out this way or it's setting out in this way. So if this measurement here is less than this measurement here, so this front to that back and this front to that back, if this is going this direction toward the B in the back is greater than these, that means your rail is setting out. All right, remember this other Y rail can't move. And if it's less than, then it's setting in. So you need to just straighten it, move it out some. Just keep moving that out a little bit. Because once you get these 3 points fixed and where they're at, everything is good. Now, in the measurement guide, when I was doing a narration, what I was talking about, when these get bolted down to here, make sure these are very smooth, all right? Like they're not hanging over any. If they are, what can happen is this x-axis can get off like this, okay? So if you're looking down from the top, they can kind of get off a little bit, or they could be a little bit off. That's really going to wear on the bars and the gears and stuff like that. So get those as perfect as you can, all right? Mine are really, really flush, all right? So I know you can get them perfect. Other than that, next step is to get this Masso hooked up. We're just going to continue on through this video and get this thing completed. I'm sorry it's going to be so long, but you guys can skip around and check out. I drilled a hole. It's a 1 1/8 inch speed bore, and these are made by Irwin. They have a little screw on the top. These things will throw some wood, so watch your eyes. But these connectors that they send, they're about 1 inch wide, so I went with a 1 1/8 just to make sure that I'd have a little bit of play. If you only have a 1 inch bit, that's fine. Just take a file or something and file yourself a little wedge. I actually thought about this. I actually thought about putting in like a 1/2 inch drill bit and then grinding away the side so I could put this in, drop this down and not have a big hole in my table. But then I thought, not a big deal. I can always put something over it or whatever. But the other side over here, this is a little bit different kind of ball game. All right, so I elected to put my two hoses. These guys get tucked down in here into a bucket, and one of them has to go to the bottom of a 5-gallon bucket and connect to a pump that has one of these on it. Okay, so I got to get a crimp, a hose crimp to get put on that. The other one has to be buried under the liquid for my spindle. This other cable in here is the one that goes to the spindle. So I just put these in here together, and I'll take the black wire and I'll tack it across the top to get back to my VFD box, the variable frequency drive. I think that's what that stands for. After I've said it enough, hopefully in my head. This hole here I put up front. The Y1, he's hooked up. These guys are split, okay? There's two cables that are put together here. I'm gonna back this out a little bit. Okay, so there's two cables that are bound together. They say Y1, and you put the Y1 in the bottom here, like that. This guy comes over the top. This is the limiter sensor wire, I think. Let's just go with that. This is the limiter right here. And so when your Y gets into this, it stops the motor from pulling it any further. This goes to your Masso controller, so that's got to stay high, and then this has got to go low. So I pulled these wires off to the side a little bit, so it will give me some distance under the table versus being over here. I mean, it's only like 3 inches, but it's still enough, because I don't know where this is going yet. I'm trying to get it as far back as I can, because the power cable on it barely gets to the back of my table. This wire is the A wire, okay? So this one gets plugged into the A here, right? This goes just up, this will be coming up through here and into the Masso. So I'm going to unplug that. The wires that are going underneath that are just white, that doesn't matter where they go on this power controller, okay? These are just power. So they're probably like 5 volts power, and they just kind of, you know, which they go, for the way it's sitting for me, they go upside down. They put the clip on the bottom. But every one of these has to go somewhere, all right? So this one says X, and this says X1. So since this says X1, there's an X1 on the side. You plug that guy in there. And then X, since it's just a single X, it goes to the Masso. So these two wires are going to the Masso. The next one is the Z1, which is on top of the X here. And that takes both of these, the limiter and the regular wire, and runs it down the path. The one that says Z on it, it goes to the Masso. And these wires will go down into the table and get connected back here. Now, there's one more wire, which is coming from the B over there, which it will come up through the top. And I highly recommend feeding this through the top. If you're putting a 1 1/8 inch hole, feed this through the top before you put any more wires down. And then this one also goes to the Masso. So there's 4 wires going to the Masso. Well, sorry, there's 5 wires going to the Masso, including this one. So that one's just going to hang there. And then the rest of these go to the power supply. Once you get all your wires run where you need them to go and you're ready to hook up your controller, there's little plugs in the back. There's a Y, a B, a Z, an X, and then an unmarked. This unmarked is the power supply for where your power supply plugs into. Okay, I think on that one there they call it A maybe. There's no A here. This controls your X-axis, your Z-axis, your right side of the Y-axis and the Y-axis. And then if you have a touch probe or a tool setter, they go in here. The other one's for a laser, all right? So those are not that big to put in. And then you have your little plug on the bottom to goes to your VFD if you have a spindle, which I do, so I got to plug that into there. I don't know about a router. I don't think a router gets hooked up. So this guy just sets on here like this. Not a big deal. And then it's probably a good idea to get this out of the way a little bit, or take this off and plug these all in. And then set this up on top. and tuck all the cables that I don't need that are going down. So I got to get those on. So at this point in time, you could fire this guy up and start controlling it without having the router or spindle or whatever running. Let me show you what I did on the side to mount my my power supply. So what I'm electing to do is down here on the side, all of your power gets run in. Like I was saying before, the white connectors are only 5-volt low voltage, so that's not a big deal. And then your big A, thing that says A on it, goes into the bigger spot. This is how you turn on your Masso. So with the power all connected, I can turn this on. Now, when I first did this, this was a little scary for me. But as you can see, everything's flashing up here. So the first thing you need to do is you need to pull this E-stop. Okay? Now at this point in time, I know you can't hear this, but there's either a fan up in here or something, but it sounds like there's things just like whining. And I don't know why. So this is, if you hit this, the home, to click on it to home it, you gotta double tap it. And then this thing tries to home itself. I don't really like that being in the way, so I gotta figure out how to get that out of my way. And this is a really good thing to do at this point in time, to watch your cables, because my tubes got wrapped up over top here like this. So I've zip stripped these off to the side, just a temporary zip strip until I figure out exactly where I'm going to tighten them down. But so make sure you have enough of everything. So I'm going to do a whole thing on the Masso later, but you have your step mode, and then here's your distances you can run. So if you're moving like Z down, it's moving it that much. Okay, you can knock this to be very, very small, and it is moving. It's just moving at a very small rate. Okay, now you can hear it moving, and it just kind of goes dit, dit, dit. Or you can hit this on continuous mode, and that'll start flashing, and then you can just hold the button down and run it up and down, and then your feed rate's going to come into place. So the faster your feed rate goes, the faster that goes. And you can dial this thing around right now. I mean, I could sit there and move this back or move the X over. We're going to end this video here in a little bit, but I just want to make sure I emphasize making sure you put enough of your tubing and your cables up at the top. There was one change that I made with this cable up here at the top, so I'm going to pop up at the top and show you that. So this is the limiter. If you remember from before, this is the limiter that goes into the X limiter to stops it from crashing into the wall down there. This is the spindle cable, or this could be your router power cord. These are the two water lines for the coolant. I'm getting to the point now where I think these are going to be where they're at, and I don't know if I'm going to tighten these up very much more. This is the cabling for this stepper motor. I had them crimped back here. I had these guys here. This crimp was underneath here, but all of this was kind of hanging out back here, and there was too much cable. All right, the cable was coming down. It was getting caught up in the drag as it was going by and getting hooked up on some of these Rowdy Roman tubes. So I elected to move this underneath here and switch this from this side to this side. Just pull it through and clamp it down. I don't see any problem with it. I don't think it's really that tight. I don't know if that's where it's supposed to be, but that's where I'm going to put it. So this is going to be the end of this video, because I don't want it to get it really long. If you liked the video, please click like. If there's anything else that you want to see in these videos, please put it in the comments. Please subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to grow this channel out so we can keep on doing stuff like this. And please have a good day.